Hello, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I am going to go through 5 breakdowns of common goals. So I've shared a lot of videos over the past few years on how to break down your goals. I'm gonna leave all of those linked down below that you can reference if this video still isn't enough or if I reference something that you want more details on. One of the big videos that I'm gonna be referencing is the 4 ways to break down your goals. Over the course of working on my own personal goals and helping others work on theirs, I have learned the 4 main ways that goals get broken down. And just to quickly run through them again, there's chronological, which is a finite number of steps that has to happen in a particular order. Sectional, which is a finite number of steps that can happen in any order. Numerical, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's a number-based goal that you break down numerically. And then the last one is progressive, which is a goal that does not have a finite end state. So the breakdown is just an ideal list of all the possible action steps you could take towards that goal. Now, again, I have a whole video going through all 4 of those in a lot more detail, but those are all gonna be important to know because I'm gonna reference all of those as I go through the 5 examples. So the first one I'm gonna give is reading, and you can break down reading in so many different ways. Reading can obviously be a numerical goal. You can say, I wanna read a certain number of books per year, and then you break that down based on what is the frequency that you're going to be reading at. So for example, let's say you want to read 52 books over the course of the year, and you are setting a goal to read every single day. Now, I hope you know, it's really hard to do something every single day, but for the sake of easy math, we're gonna say that you're gonna do it every day, even though you might miss a day here or there. So you have 52 books over the year. Start by dividing that by week. Easy math, it's 1 book per week. Based on average book lengths and average reading speeds, 1 book per week is about 1 hour of reading per day. Obviously that could be different based on your individual reading speed and your individual book preferences, like what book length you typically read, but let's stick with 1 hour per day. So that goal, 52 books over the course of the year, breaks down to 1 hour of reading per day. That was a very numerical based breakdown. However, numerical breakdowns don't always have to be broken down so evenly. You can also use that numerical breakdown method to go the other way and reverse it. Let's say you can commit to reading 30 minutes a day, 3 to 4 times a week. That's what you know that you can fit that into your schedule. Well, using the same numbers that we used before, 30 minutes a day, 3 to 4 times a week means you're gonna finish a book about every 2 weeks. So over the course of the year, you could realistically finish 26 books. The thing to remember with numerical breakdowns though, is that it doesn't always have to be broken down evenly. The example I always give here is, let's say you're a teacher or you work in education. And so you know that you have a lot more time to read over the course of the summer. Maybe you take your 52 books a year reading goal and you break it down to 1 book a month during the school year and a larger number of books, depending on how long your summer break is, per whatever, maybe it's per month, maybe it's per week, over the course of the summer. Just because it's a numerical breakdown doesn't mean it has to be broken down perfectly. The other part of a reading goal though, that's not a numerical breakdown, is sectional, and that is actually picking the books that you want to read. Now, you may be the kind of person that just picks a book as you go. Like you don't say, I'm gonna pick from this set of books. You're like, I'm just gonna pick the next book that I'm gonna read. In that case, ignore the next part that I'm gonna say. But if you have a goal to say, read all of the books on your shelf, maybe that's just me, then that is now a sectional goal because that is a finite number of steps. Like there will be a moment that I am done with all the books on my shelf, but I can read them in whatever order I want. I just wanna show you how one very common goal, like reading, can have a couple of different ways that you break it down. Let's move into another common goal, which is decluttering. This is a very clearly sectional goal. There is a finite number of steps, right, that you eventually would be done with. I know it feels like you're never done with it, but you would eventually be done with the finite number of steps. The key to a goal like this is that you want to break it down even more granularly. We usually can figure out that first step, right? You're like, okay, I've got it. I want to declutter, and step is like, I'm going to break it up by room in my house. But then I want you to break it up even more. And each of these layers is still sectional. So you start with the room in your house, right? Let's say we were doing my office. So the first level of sectional is gonna be by room, and that's the office. Then the next level of sectional is gonna be, okay, we've got the bookshelf, we've got the closet, we've got the desk. We also have this pile in the corner that you can't see, that's a mess, right? So those are the next 4 sections that I break it down a little bit more. Then you can break it down even more. And I promise you're gonna thank me in a second when I talk about why we're gonna break it down so granularly. So then let's break down the shelves, right? I'm gonna do each individual shelf as its own breakdown. In the closet, I'm gonna do each kind of section. The closet has like these different little parts of it, and I would do each little section. The desk is kind of, there's not really a way to break that down even further. And then the pile in the corner, that one is not necessarily gonna be sectional, but like chronological. It's gonna be like, go through the pile to start with, throw away what needs to get thrown away, put away the stuff that needs to get put away after I go through the pile, right? It's not necessarily gonna be a sectional breakdown. The biggest reason we wanna break it down into as small of sections, or breaking down into as small of steps as we possibly can, is that we don't know how long any of these things are going to take. Because even though decluttering is a sectional, like a very obvious sectional goal to break it down, that is not how I would recommend that you actually schedule time for it. Because again, you don't know how long things are gonna take. Some areas are probably easier to guess than others, right? Like one of these little shelves, like I know it's not gonna take me that long. Some of the areas of the closet though, it's gonna take me a lot longer. And so if I put in my schedule, let's say I block off 30 minutes and I say I'm gonna do this one section of the closet, and then I start and I take everything out of the closet, and then 30 minutes is up and I'm not done with it, then what? What do I do? Do I get to check it off? Do I have to keep going? Like what happens next? And not that you're not still gonna have to decide what happens next if you want to like leave the pile on the floor, which is one of the reasons why I recommend the book Decluttering at the Speed of Life. If this is a goal for you, she talks about how to avoid piles. The point I'm trying to make though is that by scheduling by area, you are not going to know how long it's gonna take you, and therefore you're not going to likely finish what you put on your plate. Instead, if you put into your planner, into your schedule, I'm gonna spend 30 minutes decluttering, and then the time rolls around, you look at your sectional list, and the next thing on the list is that section of the closet, and you start working on it, then when your 30 minutes is up, even if you haven't finished that, you still get your 30-minute check mark and you move on. And then when your next 30 minutes pops up in your schedule, maybe you go back and finish the closet, maybe you go move on to another area, I don't know. But you're breaking it down by time and scheduling it that way as opposed to scheduling it by section. The next goal that I want to use as an example and break it down with you is starting a YouTube channel. This is also one that I get all the time is, how do I start a YouTube channel? What are the steps? This is very much a chronological goal, right? There are exact steps that you have got to follow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in order to start a YouTube channel. So let's start high level. Let's not even worry about the whole channel piece of it. Let's just do uploading a YouTube video, right? So step 1 is you've got to pick a topic. The next step is you've got to break that topic down, make an outline of some kind, whether you're scripting out every single word or you're just making an outline, which is what I do. Next up, you've got to film it, then you've got to edit it, then you've got to do all the steps in the background, right? Create a thumbnail, put things in the description, etc. That's the first level. Then you've got to break it down even more. And each one of those individual steps can be broken down into more steps. And some of those are also gonna be chronological, right? The actual filming of the video is still gonna be a chronological process. I'm gonna get ready for the video, I'm gonna set up the camera, and then I'm gonna click record and I'm gonna film it. Where the last piece of it is gonna be broken down a little bit more sectional. You could do all of those steps in whatever order you wanna do them. Adjust the title, make the thumbnail, add the links in the description box. There's a lot of different steps there, and there's a finite number of them, but you can do them in any order. The big thing about a goal like this, I know what the steps are for this goal because I've done it for so many years. But if you are starting a goal like this for the first time, like a chronological goal that has a lot of steps and a lot of steps within steps, it's probably gonna require a little bit of research to figure out what the steps are before you can start acting on it. This happens to me a lot with business goals. There's a lot of times that I will pick a business goal, and the first step is to research all the steps and to break it down even further because I don't know what the steps are. So keep that in mind when you're working on breaking these types of goals down, that it's okay that figuring out what all the steps are and what the right order of the steps are might require some research, maybe it's asking an expert, and ultimately it might require just starting to take action. Because that's the last thing I want to say in this example, is that there are a lot of steps, especially with a goal like this one, that I didn't know were steps until I started doing it, right? I may have been able to research my way to that step, but ultimately doing it revealed what the step was going to be. The next type of goal that I want to talk about is routine-based goals. This is also a very common goal that people talk about and ask about all the time. To me, routine-based goals are sectional because there is a finite end state, and whether that is the amount of time that you have or you are just done picking all the steps that you've put all the steps in that you want to be a part of that routine, there is a time that you can consider yourself done with that routine. It might feel progressive because there are so many possibilities in terms of steps, but I promise you, there's a time when you're done. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not adjusting it and refreshing it and changing it, and that's just goals in general. In fact, my morning routine video went live last week. I can guarantee you I've already changed something since that video went live. So just because it's sectional doesn't mean that you're not making adjustments. But you can implement those steps in any order. So when it comes to breaking down a routine goal, step one is listing out all the things that you want to be a part of that routine. What are all the possible steps that you might want to include? Just because you list it doesn't mean you have to. That is one of the biggest hangups when people work on routines, is they list out all the things that they do want to include, and then they make the routine based on that list without even giving themselves the opportunity to decide that they do or do not want to include that. They're like, here's all the things, okay, here's the order I would do them in, here's how long they're gonna take it, okay, here's my 7-hour morning routine. I've been there. I've totally tried to make a routine that way and it's not successful. The best way I found to implement a routine and stick with it is to start by listing all the possible options that you might want to include. And then you start layering them in one at a time. So you pick one step. Don't worry about all the others. You pick one step from that list that you are excited about. Maybe it's the smallest step, maybe it's the easiest step. There's really no right answer, you just need to get started. I tend to try and start with either like the smallest or the easiest step first, and you start with that one. And that's your routine, that's it. For now, it's that one step. And you work on that step until it's consistent. Then you go back to your list and you pick what's the next step that I wanna layer in, and you layer in the next one. And you keep doing that until you hit the boundary, whatever the boundary is. Now for most routines, the boundary is time, right? Especially like a morning routine or an after work routine, this is the amount of time. Once you've hit that boundary, all those other things on the list are clearly not as important. And you have figured out what the best routine is for you in the confines of that time. If there is no time as a boundary, you could keep layering them in. But what might happen is you decide that some of those steps don't belong there, or you might want to spend more time or less time on certain steps. It's going to take a little bit of trial and error, but I promise you that route of creating and implementing a routine, this was more about implementation, I guess, than breaking it down. The thing I'm trying to get you to not do is break it down by creating this like perfect routine with all the steps with the amount of time you think it's gonna take. Because promise, once you start working on them, you'll realize that things take different amounts of time than you probably thought. So breaking down a routine, sectional, all of the options, but then working on them one at a time until you hit whatever the confines are. The confines might be that you finish the list, or the confines might be that you're out of time. All right, before I get into the last goal, I do wanna say that even after listening to all of these examples, if breaking down goals is still something that you struggle with, come join our community. I guarantee there is somebody within our community that has a similar goal to you that you can get ideas from. You can post in the Facebook group and get suggestions and feedback on your breakdowns. And there are going to be other people who have worked on or are working on similar goals that will be able to provide their thoughts, as well as I will provide my feedback and thoughts as well. The day this video goes live is the community's 3-year anniversary, which is absolutely amazing. So it's changed a lot over 3 years, but come join us. It's still as amazing as it was day one. Okay, the last goal is weight loss. And I'm including this if I know it is a tough subject for some people. So feel free to click out if this is not the topic that you want to hear about, or we want to hear how I break this goal down. But it is one of the most common goals, especially when people come to work with me one-on-one. So I'm going to talk about how I break it down. Weight loss can be a numerical goal, and that's where most people go with it. By the way, you can also talk about the thought process that I'm gonna use, this like numerical progressive combo for weight loss to savings goals as well. It's a numerical goal, right? You have a amount of weight that you wanna lose, even if it's a range because you're not quite sure. Typically, we set it up as a numerical goal and we break it down as a numerical goal. But at the end of the day, there are so many different action steps that you can take to lose weight. So it is not a numerical goal. It is not a sectional. These are the exact things that you have to do. It is progressive. There are so many different action steps that you can take to be successful at this goal. So I've shared in another video before where I talked about action action steps by type of goal, and I did physical health as a category. The 5 areas that I start with when we're breaking this goal down. But in this video, I'm gonna go through each of those and talk about which breakdown method I would apply to each of those. So tier 1 for weight loss is progressive. And then there are 5 areas that I start with in terms of coming up with action step ideas. But again, there are countless action step ideas that you could come up with within each of these categories. So the first one is sleep, and this one can definitely be numerical, right? You're getting this amount of sleep and your ultimate goal is to get this amount of sleep. So you're gonna do 5 minutes a day until this day to get there. That is not how I would recommend it. I do still think it's a numerical goal, and tracking it numerically can be beneficial, but I wouldn't put a set timeline on it. I would say, okay, I'm currently getting 6 hours of sleep. My ultimate goal, you might know what your ultimate goal is, or you might not. You might not know what feels good in terms of a max amount of sleep because you've never gotten it. So you start with where you're at. You start with, I'm at 6 hours. Okay, this next week, I'm gonna go to bed 15 minutes early, or I'm gonna sleep in 15 minutes. You can tack it on to either end. And that's, now I'm gonna do 6 hours and 15 minutes. And then you do that until it's consistent. And then once that's consistent, then you can tack on another 15 minutes. And so it is numerical, but we're not breaking it all down exactly. We're layering it on piece by piece until we get to the number that we want to get to. Sleep may also, or only if you don't want to deal with the numbers and tracking it and you just want to focus on how you feel and do you feel like you're getting quality sleep, right? Maybe you're getting enough sleep, like you're spending enough hours in bed, but you're not getting quality sleep. Now it becomes progressive. What are all the action steps you could take to get better sleep? There's a book I always recommend called Why We Sleep. It's a great place to start, but there are so many different things you could do to help improve your sleep. So you break that down progressively, you come up with all the varying action steps. Is it, turning off a certain amount of lights before at a certain time? Is it reading instead of TV before bed? Is it stopping caffeine or something at a certain time of day, etc.? There's so many different action step ideas. The next one is water. This one is definitely numerical. You need to track it. Start with where you're at. I always recommend tracking it in terms of like a cup size like this as opposed to like ounces. That one's pretty straightforward. The next one is stress, and this one is absolutely progressive. You are coming up with action step ideas, just options of things that you could do to help this category. I always recommend starting with 2 lists. 1, what stresses me out, and how do I relieve stress? Start with those 2 lists and then use the things from that list to create action steps to help manage your stress. The next one is movement. This one absolutely also lends itself to a numerical breakdown, and you can break it down in so many different ways. You can do it with steps, you can do it with frequency of workouts, you can do it with time of workouts. Whatever makes the most sense for you in your life is the best way to break that goal down. There's also a little bit of a progressive component to movement because there are so many different ways to track it and so many different types of movement. You do not have to do one type of movement or tracking in order to lose weight. Yes, movement is important for a lot of different reasons, but if something's not working for you, try something else. Have lots of action step options that you can implement for this goal. And then the last one is food, and there's really 2 options here. One is to do it numerically, right, and track something. Just like movement, there's a lot of things you could track here. You could track macros, you can track calories, you can track types of food. There's so many different things that you could be tracking related to food and then set numerical goals based on that. Or there is another option, which I think sometimes is easily forgotten because we're so hung up that the only way to improve our nutrition is by tracking something. And that is a progressive option. So instead of focusing on tracking, if that stresses you out as it relates to food, come up with ideas. Come up with 1% improvements of things that you could do to help improve your nutrition, right? For me, it's as simple as when we go out to eat, I try to only have 1 carb. If I'm gonna have a burger, I need to get a side of something else because the bun is the carb. Little things like that are small tweaks and things that you can make, and I promise you they add up over time. But looking at it from a stance of what are the little changes, what are the action step options, the ideas that I could come up with that I can try and see how they go and implement them a little bit over time as opposed to making some massive overhaul. Now, that was a lot because there is a lot to that goal. The thing I really want you to take away here is that it doesn't have to be all numerical. That goal does not just have to be, oh, I want to lose 1 pound a week and that's how I'm going to lose weight. there are a lot of ways to break down that goal that has nothing to do with the number on the scale. And the same thing applies, bonus savings goals. Yes, you can break it down numerically and say, I'm gonna save this amount, but it really comes down to progressive action steps that are going to help you actually achieve those savings numbers, right? Where is that money coming from that you're going to be saving? So I'm not gonna go into that one in detail. This video is already long enough. Hopefully it was helpful, whether you have one of these goals exactly or just hearing these examples helps give you some more suggestions or ideas on how to break down your individual goals. Again, if you're struggling with breaking down goals, come join us inside the Goals with Laken community and we will help you get that goal all broken down. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, please click that subscribe button. I upload new videos every week focused on helping you achieve your goals. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you. Sometimes actually, I'm gonna do something else first. I wanna talk about to help break, for these better dying again. What are the various actions?